Okay, yeah, I heard the recording announcement. Hello, hello. We will get started with the session soon. Just let everyone join us. We are talking about BFCM today. Thank you for joining us. And we will officially get started in about a minute or two. This is our first Black Friday session. So we're talking about this kind of early, but that's a good thing, which we'll explain more. But this is the first kind of Black Friday, Cyber Monday prep session we're doing. For beginners, intermediate, I would say, this session. We'll talk about some beginner things just to answer some basic questions, but then we'll also go into deeper strategy. So wherever you kind of are in that, I hope you're able to get something out of today's session. All right, it looks like we are just about at the start time, so I will slowly start in case anyone else is joining us as we begin. So once again, welcome everyone. This is our webinar, our MailerLite webinar, BFCM Without the Burnout. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday prep easily, without stressing, without burnout. That's kind of the idea. So simple and effective marketing advice for small businesses. And just some quick housekeeping and announcements at the beginning of the session. This is being recorded and we will send this out to everyone who has registered. So if you need to leave early or anything, as long as you've registered for this session, you'll get the recording afterwards. So no worries there, we're recording everything. And then also you're encouraged to ask questions to either of us during the webinar, but please ask them in the Q&A. You will see the webinar chat and the Q&A. They're kind of two separate boxes. And keep an eye on the chat. That's mostly just for our panelists. They'll kind of add in some links. They'll add in some resources to kind of go along with what we're saying. But for any questions during the session, you can add those into the Q&A. And either our panelists will answer them, or we might save them for the end, and we will have we'll have a deeper Q&A towards the end. But feel free to ask any questions during the session. Okay, and quick intro just for myself. My name is Harmony. If you've joined some of these sessions, you might see me, but I do host a lot of our webinars. I also am a customer education specialist here at MailerLite. So I work with the knowledge base mainly. Been here for about 5 years, so I know a lot about the app and just kind of how things work. And I would say my specialty is not strategy, which is why I like to have guests with me to talk more about their strategy, people actually using email marketing in their business to do all sorts of things. So that is why I'm very grateful to have our guest here today. Our guest is Jenny Isaguirre, and she's the founder of Carousel Digital, also a MailerLite expert, someone who knows a lot about email marketing, marketing in general, and is going to help us just learn about this strategy when it comes to Black Friday and sales and all of that. So really grateful to have her here. Like I said, my specialty is not strategy, so thank you, Jenny, for being with us. And I will also pass it off to the mic to her so she can talk a little bit more about herself and Carousel Digital, what it is that she does.
Thank you, Harmony, for the introduction, and thank you for having me today. Welcome, everyone. My name is Denise Aguirre. I am a business consultant. I'm specialized in strategy and e-commerce, and I'm a former Shopify employee. I was the human behind launching Shopify to the Spanish-speaking world, 21 countries back then, and growing their email list to a couple of thousand people. Today, I help small businesses get ready for commerce, get ready for anything that has to do with selling online, getting their structure, their business structure ready to go online and have a successful online business.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And it's great too, because we are growing our audience in the Spanish speaking world. So our audience is mixed in that way. So that's great. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your insight and everything. So just to go over our agenda, what we'll be talking about today, the session should be an hour. Towards the end, we will have a Q&A. So if that does run over, maybe, but all the information will be in that hour. At first, we'll talk about BFCM basics, just answering some of the intro questions. What is Black Friday even? What are we speaking about? What is like holiday marketing? What are just some kind of those basic strategies that are good to know when you're getting started? And then we'll kind of go a bit deeper here. So going deeper into the strategies and showing demos as well. So we'll talk about email strategy from planning out your campaigns in advance, as well as the kind of content you can be sending and what that can look like. Targeting the right audience, so who you're sending to. And then automations. So beforehand, before the sales period, after the sales period, we'll go into a bit more. And like I said, I'll show some demos here. So we'll talk about the strategy, and then I will also show a bit about like segmenting and automations in MailerLite so you can get a visual about what all of these things look like. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions for Jenny or just anything that we talk about that we want to go deeper in depth with that you want to ask, that'll be towards the end. Okay, let's get started. So let's talk just like absolute basics, intro to Black Friday, Cyber Monday. So, of course, just to answer the question, of course, that you want to know at first, what is BFCM? You might have heard of Black Friday, but BFCM is somewhat of a marketing or a new term. But it's an annual shopping event starting technically the day after Thanksgiving. It's kind of started because of that holiday period in the US, although at this point, Black Friday really is like a sales event that happens in many different countries, many different regions all over the world. So the idea and the holiday season kind of originated with that idea, but now it's really just a period for anyone who is in the e-commerce industry to offer sales. And it's kind of become a thing that people expect around this time. People kind of sometimes will even wait until this time of year to purchase. And also this all is before Christmas. So it's a way for people to also get gifts for people. And then the CM is Cyber Monday. So when we're actually talking about Black Friday this year takes place on the 28th. So I believe that's just the Friday right after that Thanksgiving Day. And then Cyber Monday is that 1st of December. So that, of course, Monday right after. And it's it's separated these two things because originally, Black Friday was more retail. So it was a thing where you would go to a store and they would have a big sale and you might line up. And it was very much an in-person thing. And then, of course, now we're in a very online world. So that, grew into a Cyber Monday. So it kind of was separated into two events. But I would say now it's very much almost one and the same, as in you don't have to be only doing retail on Black Friday and only doing, online on Cyber Monday. Like this has kind of just become a period where people give discounts and sales, and you will see a lot of online only businesses, fully e-commerce doing like Black Friday deals. So it's not just retail, of course. It's just how it started. Okay. And why are we talking about this now? Because we are, about a month away, so it might seem a little bit early, but this is kind of when we do start at least talking about it, introducing the strategy, at least what should we be looking out for in the next month, or what should we be thinking about in the next month? So just some kind of facts to help you understand why email marketing also is important with this. But a lot of shoppers do start looking before November. So people are getting ready for this season in advance. They kind of, like I said, know it's coming and are already starting to look and browse and shop, maybe save things. And customers are eager to learn about BFCM sales. These are some of the highest opened campaigns throughout the year because they are things people do want to receive. Everyone loves a good discount, and you might have other sales throughout the year. Black Friday, Cyber Monday traditionally is meant to be like your biggest discount of the year. So you might have other things that went on, but this is supposed to be, the biggest one is the idea. And so many people are open to those kind of promotions. And we're not talking about, just sending people so much content right in the beginning of November. It's a slow strategy that we'll talk about, but it's more that people are open to at least hearing about Black Friday sales or hearing about promotions that early. Okay. And of course, I wanted to get more of Jenny's specific insights because when it comes to small businesses, that is who we're speaking to today. I mean, any business can really take on these strategies, but Jenny, with what you've experienced working with small businesses, being in the industry yourself, what are some kind of mistakes you see being made around with this time of year or with this sales season?
Well, the very first one is thinking that BFCM is just marketing. BFCM, as it says on the slide, is the biggest test to your business operations of the entire year, because you would need to do a lot of prep before. It doesn't need to be complicated, but it needs to be prepared. Some admin needs to be done, emails need to be written, creatives need to be created, and so on, forms, automations, etc., so that you are ready to actually focus on sales and post-sale service, customer service during BFCM weekend. And the second most common mistake is not considering the international market or considering the same as your home market. I'm based in Spain, but I've worked in North America, US, Canada. I've worked in Germany as well, and now I serve different countries in Europe. And that the holiday season varies depending on where you're located. So if you're selling international, you also need to consider that, because your holiday season, the season may expand into January, for example, to the 6th of January, as we will discuss it before. So those things need to be considered so that you can plan ahead and get the best out of BFCM and the holiday season.
Right. And I think that would apply to a lot of people watching because in general, MailerLite audience is global. So we have people, in the US, in Europe, all over the world. So that definitely applies. And I feel like nowadays, e-commerce, even for the smallest businesses, usually is outside of at least their home country where they're based, right? I feel like usually that is the case. So most often people that are selling these days are in that category. They're selling globally.
Yeah, absolutely. In, for example, Europe, the CM is not really, they are not very familiar with the Cyber Monday part of BFCM.
Mm-hmm.
They're slowly starting to get familiar. So you would probably benefit from another type of promotion if that
Yeah.
specific market doesn't necessarily do Cyber Monday. But then there are other options and there are other holidays. So it is very important to know the market you're selling to, for sure.
That's a really good point also because if the businesses aren't as used to Cyber Monday, that means the audience also, the shoppers might not be as, used to it as well. So you might want to have a slower strategy there. So you introduce it, maybe have the concept, but not just be like, this is our big Cyber Monday, have a different language. Whereas I know in the US, Cyber Monday is very much known, very much
Yeah.
expected. And so it's kind of a louder marketing, I would say.
Yeah. And even for the US, let's say the holiday season ends December 31st. New Year's, New Year, New You, that's it. Whereas in Europe, you have January 6th, which is a very big holiday, especially for those selling products for children. And that day is a lot of times bigger than Christmas itself in terms of gifts for
Right,
children. So
right.
that's another opportunity that you have to sell to your customers. And it
Yeah,
doesn't necessarily need to be kids products, but if you're selling digital products internationally and Europe is one of your markets, that's a
yeah.
date to consider.
For sure.
Mhm.
Thank you. No, all very good points. And this also kind of leads into my next question, which is, the title of this, the theme of this is burnout free prep. And I wanted to have that theme because I think, burnout is a word that we do hear a lot now, especially we're all working, we're all, we're talking about prepping for this sales season. It kind of just sounds like it's a lot of work if you're just talking about it. And especially if you're not doing email marketing full time. I think a lot of people who use MailerLite most likely they have a business that they're doing elsewhere, and MailerLite is something that they're using to support their business, but it's not their full-time, job to do email marketing. So when we talk about burnout free, I mean that's kind of a buzzword, but what does that mean like to you, or what would you describe that in your own words?
I would definitely say take the time to prepare in advance. That will prevent you from burning out. It because email marketing is just one channel out of many other things that you are doing for your business. But also, if you do another activity, then it's, as I said, it's an additional. So the idea is for you to prepare in advance, go through your KPIs, your goals for the year. When you do your yearly planning or your biannual planning, then sit down and say, okay, for BFCM, these are the resources I can allocate. I can actually afford to allocate
Yeah.
so that I can build a realistic campaign that will benefit my business and will not bring any burnout or stress to me.
Yeah, and that's very true. That's why I think we're talking about it as prep, as slow steps, so that when it gets closer to that season, you're not kind of trying to get all this together last minute. And I think too, it's always I always like to say to our audience that, things can be more simple than they seem. And it does seem like it can be a lot of work or that it has to be this deep strategy or that you might have to learn a lot. And, there is strategy behind it and you might have to learn a thing or two, but it's not as bad. And we'll talk more about that because, we'll talk about strategy in words and then I'll show it visually. It can really just be as simple as creating a few good running automations that will, kind of nurture your audience through the whole thing. That doesn't have to be complicated. If you're just starting out, there are ways to get started without it being a whole side job, basically. So we will talk more about what that looks like. Oh yeah, and these are the points that we were that we went over. So I think this is everything that we kind of mentioned, right? I don't think
Um,
we'll go
yeah,
deeper, but so far, yeah.
we addressed financial planning. What can you actually afford in terms of discounts or
Yeah.
promotions for your clients, and make sure that your audience list or your email list is cleaned up. So from those inactive users that are not engaging with your content at the moment, so that you have a better use of your campaigns when you create them. And then we're going to discuss about some pre-BFCM sales, some strategies that we can use, and promotions, automations, and so on that we can build for
Mhm.
you.
The financial planning is actually an interesting point, and it's something that I don't think we talk about too much as as MailerLite because we're not obviously involved in people's, the financials of their business. So that is important, right? Because we're talking about giving discounts and doing sales, especially it's the biggest one of the year, more than you've ever done. So that might sound great, but I like that point about realistically, what's good for your business? We do want to be involved in this. There's reasons to be. And it shouldn't be just a season where you're losing money or you're creating that kind of funnel, but you should also be, hopefully attracting new customers, but you should be knowing, I like that point, knowing where you are financially to be able to give those discounts.
Absolutely. In e-commerce, one common mistake is confusing markup for a product, and markups are always based on how much is your cost of goods sold versus profit from every sale. And profits take into account your operational costs. So this is why your financial planning is key here. So you
Mhm.
have your numbers clear, you know how much is your markup, how much is your margin, so that you can
Mhm.
then make sound decisions based on your own data. What
Yeah.
can you
Yeah.
financially afford in terms of promotions that is good for you, and it will still give you some revenue at the end of the day.
Yeah. Very, very important. And audience cleanup, we are going to go a little bit more into that. So that's an important point. Let's go right into the next section, which essentially is just going a little bit more into the topics that we've just brushed over. So planning with purpose, creating a strategy. So this is what we've talked about, prepping early, aligning your campaigns with yearly goals and KPIs. Keeping customer experience seamless both online and offline. This is a point I also want to talk about because we can talk about this from kind of my end, which is like the MailerLite, you have your automations, and then also the strategy, make sure things are not complicated and confusing for people. And then we can talk a little bit more about deliverability. So where should we start?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've already addressed the financial part and planning and keeping your objectives clear. But
Yeah.
then when you communicate it to your audience, make sure that is easy to understand, that it's in simple terms, that call to actions are super clear, or that you don't add 3 or 4 different call to actions in the same message, because you're going to end up confusing your customer. Make sure it's just one message, one call to action, so that you can get the conversion you want. Either visit my profile, buy my product, download my free lead magnet, or whatever else you're planning for on that message. And make sure that also it's on brand, your colors, your logo, your tone of voice, that you just speak to your audience the same way, both online and offline, so that they feel that this is a seamless experience for them. And in terms of your email list, as I said, we need to make sure that it's up to date, that we can start segmenting our list by the most frequent buyers, those that are repeating, some people that are buying specific product or specific service from ours, so that when we are going to send our emails, we don't just blast the entire list with an email that might not be relevant to them. Just we send them the more relevant message to that specific customer.
Absolutely. No, very, very important points. To go off of what you said about the customer experience, both online and offline, I mean, there's a lot of things that, within MailerLite, we have no control over, because we're not necessarily shipping products in that way. There's many things outside of it. But I know one thing that it does help with having the back end done in MailerLite is having those responses immediate, and so that you don't have to manually be doing much either. That's also a big plus. You don't want to necessarily be having to track everything manually, responding to everything manually. Customer service is a bit different, but as far as, when people are buying, what are they receiving right away? Are they receiving a confirmation? How does it look? Are they actually receiving it? Is your deliverability in a place where it actually lands in their inbox and they see that email, or does it go straight to spam and they don't know if, their purchase was ever confirmed or not? Those are all very important things. And well, I'm going to show kind of what I'm talking about, but that's kind of what we mean by online and offline. It's so that the way that your system is set up, people feel like there is someone behind the brand. There is someone there. It's not just they're not just purchasing something and then silence. Um, and then, of course, yeah, with deliverability, this is just also one point I will touch on. In MailerLite, there are ways to look at this, but I think what we mean is by deliverability is making sure that the subscribers that you have, the audience that you have, and of course, we're talking people that have not like they've already collected a list, that they're active subscribers, that they're people who have opened your emails and they've clicked things, that they've purchased things if you're selling, having a large portion of your list that is not interacting can harm your list. And I don't know if that's something a lot of people might realize, because I know, if you're just losing subscribers, you think I'm losing subscribers, but what do you like? How would you also agree that it is better to just go through during this time, right, beforehand, and look, not necessarily look through, but go through the email list and clean it in that way?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it is not only happening on email marketing, but also on social media, because many companies have also realized that the number of followers doesn't equal the number of sales. So you want to
Yeah.
make sure that whomever is following you, whether it's on email marketing or on your social media, they are actually buying from you. So this is where micro influencers are making more out of their small following than bigger influencers with millions of followers that are not actually converting into sales.
Sure.
And this applies for products and services. It is the same thing. We need to make sure that our list is clean, that we engage with those that are actually active. And then it doesn't mean that you're going to eliminate those or delete those that are not active in the last 15 days, but
Right.
give it some time, give it maybe 90 days. Okay, if in 90 days I've sent this many emails and this person has never opened or clicked on any of my emails, it might be a good candidate to be on the delete list. But if it's someone that has clicked, you need to look into your data, look into an average 2% click rate, and then you can try to re-engage these people. Otherwise, then it is better to keep your audience as clean as possible.
Mm, absolutely. I'm glad you also brought up the re-engagement because we are talking about this a month in advance. So that's a point that I will show in this next part. So now that we've kind of talked about all of this, I do want to visually show what some of this looks like. And of course, I'm going to do that in MailerLite. That's just what I know how to use. The things I want to really show, campaign scheduling, the different ways that that can look. So how you can kind of prep your campaigns in two different ways. Templates, we have a lot of ways to get started, from form templates to campaign templates. So before, when we were talking about not having, too many CTAs or not having certain things, having brand colors, templates will really help with a lot of that because they're pre-designed and to fit a lot of those rules. And then automations. I'll go over a simple way that they work to schedule campaigns in advance. So just bear with me for one moment. I will go over to our app. You should be able to see me in here. So let's go right over to campaigns. And I just want to talk about scheduling. So I'm not going to be showing how to create a campaign or really anything like that. This is for when you want to prep your campaigns in advance, schedule them in advance, so have things already designed, ready to go, and they're just ready to be sent at a different time. There are a few ways to do that. One of them is like this, in just campaigns. This is if you are just sending one-off campaigns. So this is not any kind of sequence. It is just, a one-off campaign that is sent. And, you design the email. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but you design your email. And then once you get to the send options, this is where, you can send it right away. You can schedule it later. So you can schedule it, of course, for a specific time and date. And then you can also change the time zone. This is just where I am. You can also do based on time zones. These are both paid features. So send later, of course, you can do that in the free plan, and send now, of course, you can send an email in the free plan. Time zones and smart sending are paid, but I'm going to mention them because they are also ways to schedule in advance. Time zones is actually very useful if you have, let's say, a specific discount that is starting at like a very specific time and you want it to be the same time and you have a global audience or your audience is spread across the US and Europe and you don't want people in the US to have to, wake up at 3 a.m. for your sale, you can say, okay, it's going to be 10 a.m. in general across those time zones. And this is how you'd be able to organize that. So this is how you can send it, let's say 10 a.m. in the subscriber's specific time zone. And then smart sending, this is involved with AI, artificial intelligence. This is meant to analyze your previous campaign's performance and send campaigns at the most optimal time for each subscriber. So again, this is a little more if you've been using this, if you're kind of familiar with how AI works, I recommend having a look. But overall, sending in advance and time zones are really great features to do that with. And of course, automations are another way. So instead of just sending one-off campaigns as I showed, you can also create sequences. I will just do a new one as a demo. And we have a lot of templates to get you started. And when I say sequences, this is what I'm referring to. If you have not really seen what our automations look like, this is a bit what I mean. And we talked about inactive subscribers. We have a template specifically for that. This is a template that specifically allows you to see those subscribers that are not active, that are not opening your emails, that, are not really engaged, and then to actually unsubscribe them at the end after they go through some of that. Um, Retargeting, we also mentioned. This is for those subscribers also that are inactive, and this is a bit more of a simple flow. But I will just very quickly show some advanced scheduling with automations. Again, not going to get too complicated here at all, but this is the activities that start these automations. Let's say they complete a form, right? You have a form on your website, they submit it, and that is how they enter into this sequence. I can choose any of my forms, and there we go. Anyone who signs up using that form enters this automation. And when we were talking about that seamless customer experience, we want them to receive an email, let's say, right away after that form is submitted. So as you can see, all I did, we have these actions here. Send email is one of them. I just dragged it over, and now someone completes that form and they are sent an email. And this is how you put that email together. Just as an example, it can also be an email that you have already created, or it can be a template. This is also what I wanted to mention. Like I said, we do have specific Black Friday templates as well. So if you really just need something to get started, have a look at these, and you can use these to kind of get creative. We have templates that have these countdown timers. And like I said, these are optimized to the advice that we had about not overwhelming the audience with CTAs, having the colors branded, everything like that. So, even Cyber Week, all of that, specific e-commerce deals, lots of different templates to choose from. But let me just go back to this workflow. And because this is a sequence, it's going to be an actual thing that they start and end in. They're going to start with the form, receive an email. Now I want to add a delay. This is where the scheduling in advance comes in a way. So these are not going to be sent on necessarily specific days. So this is a little different to what I said before about you have a sale that starts and ends. This is more specific to each subscriber. When they submit the form, they receive an email. I want them to then wait, let's say 3 days. And then we'll send another email. And this is just, promo offer 2, right? And again, we can do another delay. Let's say a week later. You can see there's lots of ways to schedule. You can also schedule a specific time and day, but typically this is what we show or what we recommend. And one last email as an example. And that's it. This is just a very, very simple automation just because I wanted to show how you can schedule your emails this way as well. So also in the campaigns page, but also based on actions such as completing a form, joining a group, and you can schedule out your emails like this. These are a bit random times, but at least 24 hours in between emails, at least. And that is almost a strategy that you want to use closer to your sales. I don't think you necessarily want to be sending emails every 24 hours at this, this early, but this is an example. So at least 24 hours to give people time to, see your emails open, but typically a few days. At this early, several days up to a week. Like we said, it really does depend on your specific strategy and the market you're targeting, but this is how you can slowly introduce content sales.
If I can add up an idea, if
Absolutely.
if you're starting early to warm up your list, automations can help you save time so that you can, instead of sending a promotion every other day, just send an email once a week or like twice a week. Just talk about a product you're launching during maybe BFCM only launch or BFCM only product. That's something that's seasonal. Or tell them about the benefits of the or your products, your services. What is it that you're doing special for BFCM? You can invite them to a VIP
Mhm.
early sales list so that they can get special discounts, and you start warming up that audience and start seeing the interaction and the engagement these people have with you. so that by the last week before Black Friday, Cyber Monday, they are already informed of what products are available, what services, what is it that you're doing special, if there's a VIP list, if they can buy before Black Friday evening or Cyber Monday, and then you get that traction going on. It will really help you get more sales rather than waiting until the last week to do all of this.
Yes, very, very important points. And these are all, like I said, I'm not really going to go too into a deep automation demo right now, but these are all things that you can do in MailerLite with automations. Adding to VIP groups, understanding who's opening your emails, who's not, and separating those people, all very possible. I will also talk about e-commerce automations, but not right now. We're going to go more into that in another section, but we do have specific e-commerce. Again, I will go into that. I believe we're going to speak a bit more about segmenting, and that is where we'll talk about those e-commerce specific automations. I believe that was all I wanted to show. Let me just switch back over to our slides here. Okay. So this is where we talk a little bit more about content itself. So what's actually going in those emails? How are we speaking to people around this time of year? Because it can be a little different too. And then also we bring up a point about repurposing, which goes into that whole burnout free theme. Um, yeah, so storytelling, urgency, clear CTAs.
Something I always tell my customers, I work with service providers, but also e-commerce businesses. And for both of them, I always tell them, if your customer doesn't understand what you sell, they will not buy. They
Yeah.
want to understand what is it that you're selling, who you are, what you sell, what solution you bring to the problem. So this needs to be really clear. This is why I mentioned before for the CTAs, just one CTA per message, so that you get them to do whatever is it that you want conversion for. Storytelling. Everybody loves a good story. So why not tell it? You can tell the story of your business, the story of why you started this business,
Mhm.
why you decided to sell this specific type of product or service, who you're helping. You can tell the story of a former client. A good story is always well received by customers. And you can play with countdown for urgency, or say I have limited spots for this service, or I only have a very limited stock for this product or this collection. Make sure that you get your product on time. So
Mhm.
this can engage your audience and bring them closer to you, and also bring loyalty at the end of the day. That's what you want to keep with your customers, so that you can extend their lifetime value with your business. And
Mhm.
for this, you can also repurpose your top performing content. How do you know what's the best performing content? Your data will tell you that.
Yeah.
And generally, you can use those good stories as evergreen content that you can always repurpose. So
Mhm.
that's one tip there that you can use for your content.
Yeah, very important. I mean, that's also what we talked about, simplifying things for yourself, not recreating everything for Black Friday. You can see what worked in general, what worked, not even just content wise, but strategy wise. Was there a certain method that you tried that worked really well that maybe you could try again during the season? So yeah, identifying what worked. And yeah, urgency, there's different ways to have urgency be a part of the messaging. I think, like we talked about, depending on what your market is, certain markets might be a little louder and might start their promotions sooner, while other markets you might want to slowly introduce things and then create urgency, later on. I showed briefly the countdown timer. So we have little features like that that just kind of it's ways to be like, okay, this is your window.
Yeah,
And
I for the data, I'm sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
no, no, no. I was gonna just look at the next point about data. Go ahead.
Well, based on what we said before, if you want to
Mhm.
repurpose your content, and not only data is not only important for your finances and for deciding which discount, but also for your own content. knowing
Mm.
what content works and what doesn't, and what can you reuse and reformat into, maybe you can use it on your social media because it worked wonders on your email marketing. So these numbers are going to help you build that, and you don't need to recreate content over and over and over again.
Completely. And that's one of the main benefits of using an email marketing platform is you can see all of that data. You know who's opening your emails, you know what they're clicking, you know how engaged they are or aren't. So all very important when it comes to that strategy. And then, we talked about kind of content-wise what it looks like, and then now like who you're actually sending to. This is very important because we don't ever usually recommend to just send everything to everyone. That's usually not the best strategy. Maybe for a specific industry, specific business, but in general, you do want to be segmenting. And that can be done in different ways. That looks different. So by engagement, purchase behavior, interest. Engagement is without any kind of like e-commerce stats. So engagement is really just, are they opening emails? Are they clicking things? That kind of engagement. Purchase behavior is where we kind of talk about then, are they loyal customers? How much have they purchased in before? Are they new? So yeah,
Yeah,
as far as segmenting, what are your kind of um, strategies that you give to small businesses or just in general when it comes to segmenting audiences?
you can you can look into what type of product have they bought, because you don't want to be sending them an email for a promotion for a product that they are not interested in and they never showed interest in it,
Yeah,
or service as well. Um, when you're building that email campaign for a specific service that you provide, then make sure that there's information about that you're really targeting that person, so that that personalization comes clear and that person feels closer to that message and they can actually convert into that,
mhm,
either booking a session, buying your product, and so on. um, you can get them, to interact with your email and with your content, but then we want them to perform an action. So this
mhm.
is when we really need to make sure we're sending the right message to the right person. We don't want to blast everyone.
Yeah,
Only those cases, maybe, I don't know, you're sending them like a very, oh, we're opening a new store
sure.
downtown this city. But even then, you need to segment it to the customers that are in that city
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah. No,
Mm.
very important. And I think that's an important strategy kind of in general for email marketing, like
Yeah.
not outside of BFCM, outside of anything. We always will talk about segmenting. But I think it's especially important this time of year because like talking about like crowded inboxes, everyone who has an email list is sending an email during this time of year practically. So, in a world where people are already going to be receiving a lot of bids for their attention, that is a reason to personalize, to target, to segment, because people are more likely to say, okay, this looks a little bit more, interesting to me versus something that's sent out to everyone.
And not only that, we need to consider that BFCM and the holiday season in general is the most expensive season for ads, for anything that has to do with paid marketing. And if you're paying for any of your activities in marketing, then you need to really make sure that you're putting your money where your client is.
Sure.
And then for e-commerce as well, your email needs to sound interesting, because also platforms have become more and more strict in terms of the content. And if there's a lot of uh, grab it for free, this is a promo, or our sale, and that's all the
Yeah.
content has, it will be marked as spam.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is why we need to think of, okay, what content do I actually want for this
Mhm.
audience, and then send it for the right audience.
Yeah. It's a super important point. It's the audience you're sending to and the content you're sending, that both of that play into where you're getting placed in the inbox if it's getting opened.
Mhm.
All very, very important points.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so this is where, again, now that we've talked about some things, I will visually show some stuff that we talked about. As far as segmenting, I will go into the app and show a little bit about that. But because we're talking about segmenting for purchase activity, I want to talk about e-commerce integrations, specifically, of course, with MailerLite. We have lots of different integrations with e-commerce platforms, so all of the big ones that many people are familiar with. This makes it so easy to segment. So if you're thinking, how do I get started with that? How do I know which customers have purchased what products? How do I know if they're loyal? This is one of the easiest ways how to know is connecting your e-commerce shop to MailerLite, getting that data, and those segments are then created for you automatically. So that's a really great way to do that. That can be done manually. So if you don't have one of these and you're not sure that it can be done manually as well. But we do have integrations to make it simple. And I'll briefly talk about digital products within MailerLite itself because that is a somewhat new thing. Again, not a big demo, but just to mention it to anyone who's not aware. And again, with the e-commerce integrations, I will talk about, like I said before, e-commerce automations. So these are still automations, but a separate category because it's all based on that specific purchase data and purchase behavior. You only get access to these type of um, actions. So purchasing products, purchasing specific products from categories, and of course the abandoned cart most people are familiar with. You only are able to access these with an e-commerce integration. So any of those will allow you to be able to segment that way. But let me go ahead and show what I am referring to. Okay, so we're back in that workflow we were in before, and now we'll talk about the e-commerce. So let me just get rid of some of these emails or some of these steps here. Quite simple. And you can see this is how we would start an e-commerce automation. So you can have several stores connected to the same MailerLite account. That's possible. You could have products that you've created in MailerLite and also Shopify that you can then have in the same account. That's all possible. And you would just simply drag and drop as the others. And then this is where, like I said, if you have different shops, you select which shop. And then because this is buys any product, that is what this will fire for. So product is purchased, this starts. Of course, I can also be more specific, like I showed before, buys a specific product. I'm also showing multiple triggers here. So this could be the same workflow for both, really depends. But buys a specific product, again, select the shop, and then select the product. So when that product is purchased, that flow begins. And that can be used for so many different types of strategy because you are able to target content to the customers that buy the specific products. So whether that means showing them other products they might be interested in, asking for feedback on the product, anything like that, you are getting really targeted here with that. So that is the automations. I'll go over into subscribers to talk about segments. So when we talk about segmenting, there are two ways to do that, groups and segments. And this is very specific to MailerLite. So if you're working in other platforms, terms might be different. In MailerLite, we do talk about groups and segments differently. Groups are manually created. When people sign up to forms, they can be added to groups. You can manually just choose a subscriber and add them to a group. So groups are very versatile in that way. You create them how you want them to be, whereas segments are based on specific rules. When you create a segment, and I am right now talking about just kind of in general, not e-commerce, you create a filter, rule, condition, whichever word you want to use, and only the subscribers that meet that condition will go into this segment. So let me just choose a simple one, sign up source. is imported. So you can see that refresh the list made it smaller. This is just a very simple condition. That means I now have a list of all of my subscribers that I have imported myself manually. Maybe I brought them over from a certain platform and, I want to know who was imported from a file. That is how I could separate that out. And of course, there are lots of different types of these segments. You can segment by location, by time zone. This is all very useful for when you're sending campaigns. You can send to these segments specifically. And then, of course, we do have the e-commerce options as well. Again, only if you do have those integrations, but has not purchased products, has purchased products, all kinds of different targeting you can get with that. And then just briefly, I want to talk about when we talk about like cleaning up inactive subscribers or inactive subscribers, MailerLite does actually have a tool for this. There are ways to do this also, like I said, through automations, but as a simple tool, this section here allows you to see who has been inactive. So time period, inactive 6 months, 12 months, never opened an email ever. And then how many were they sent? How many opportunities were they given to open an email in that time? And that'll bring up that list that is very easy to then just select all. And then you can, create a group or you can, retarget, try to re-engage those subscribers. All right, that was basically it. Because I talked about e-commerce automate integrations, Shopify, WooCommerce, I will just also say that if you do not have any of those stores, if you or don't have any store, or if you need to just create products maybe quickly or differently, you can do that within MailerLite. This is not connected to other e-commerce. This is not Shopify. This is not, it does use Stripe as the payment processor. But this section here, products, it just allows you to create an actual digital product fully within MailerLite. So, adding the image, name, description. This is Black Friday. So you can, of course, add your discount right there and it will show. It will show, like if you had a previous price, it'll show kind of the discounted price and what it was before, so you can kind of play with that. This is really for digital kinds of products and things mainly, so you can add files, URLs, you can link to other things, you can choose how the actual delivery of the product looks like. And then what happens if they purchase? This is where targeting again comes in. If they purchase a product and we add them to a group, that group can then set off an automation with a sequence of emails. That's a kind of a simple way to do this. Okay, and I think that's about all I was going to show. And we are almost at the end of our session here. So I really appreciate those of you here that are watching, that are with us. Hopefully this has been a good session so far. This last portion is our Q&A. So I see some questions that have already been asked throughout the session that our panelists have kind of said would be better if we looked at and answered. And so we'll look at those. But then also feel free if you have questions around this time. Feel free to ask, but let me check. Oh yeah, Jenny, I don't think you're able to actually see these questions. So let me just have a quick look here. We've talked a lot about this. Someone said, how should we prepare our customers in advance for BFCM or Black Friday promotions? I think that most of this was talking about like the pre-prep, and I think that we touched a lot on that. Let me just
Yeah,
have a look.
basically just warming up your audience with communications before Black Friday, Cyber Monday, not just promotion emails.
Someone said, and I think this goes back to when I mentioned how, Black Friday is traditionally your biggest sale. It's not some kind of law, but it is, what people might expect. Someone said the only discount I have ever offered is 20% off my plan during October for Menopause Awareness Month. what I need. Do you think I would need to discount further for Black Friday specifically? If so, how much would you recommend? I don't know if we could give specific like recommendations like that, but what would your thoughts be?
For service businesses, and I think this is a doctor who asked for the question. For service businesses, I I always ask my clients, please think what can you give extra rather than discounting your prices? Because as a service provider, especially you're a doctor, you your service has a value because you're a doctor. Then you don't want your client to undermine you or see, oh no, this is the cheap doctor that gives me freebies and stuff, or
Hmm.
gives me these discounts or several discounts, or this is the discount doctor. You don't want that. So because you want your customers to continue to come and maybe get something from you, then okay, you offered your 20% discount on the menopausal program or service, but then you can also say, okay, our I don't know, like I work with a lot of coaches and psychologists, and they offer packages. So let's say I have my 6 session package, but because we are on the holidays, we are offering a free session or a free session on this specific topic that's related to, in this case, menopause. So that the person feels that they are receiving something as a gift rather than you lowering the perceived value of your service.
Hmm. Yeah,
That
that's a really good point. Like discounting to not devalue the service itself just because it's an idea that it needs to have a big discount.
Yes.
Just with that idea. No,
Yeah.
that's very important.
Mm.
There's a couple other good questions in here. So someone asked, how can we effectively bridge the sales gap before BFCM, given that many customers postpone their purchase waiting for the bigger discounts? So I think this also goes back to the financial planning. I think they're saying, what if everyone just waits until this one day and all my sales are on this one day, you know?
Mm. Let's consider that BFCM represents for some businesses even more than 50% of what they're due annually, their sales, their annual revenue. So this is why we need to do a financial planning that's realistic for our product or service, and then decide on that, okay, what is it that I can actually afford? Then you can play with the urgency. You can see with scarcity. If I know that I cannot afford more than these many discounts, then I can say, okay, I only have these many discount codes available for you guys. First comes,
Mm,
first serves. So
mm,
you get your sales, but you don't affect your finances for your business. That's one way. And then warm up your list, continue to have the conversation, keep the conversation going with your clients. And if anything, then just create a pre-sale VIP list. So those might get an additional extra from you, but
hmm.
you're not affecting your financial planning at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, so that financial planning is very important when it comes to those discounts. And that also kind of relates to this next question about like the VIP content. Someone asked, is it a good idea to let subscribers know their interactions are tracked? Does that feel like rewarding their opens and clicks with like VIP access or discounts, or does it feel creepy? I would just say like there's a way to make it not feel creepy and there's a way to make it feel creepy. So it can be either way. But
Yeah.
with the right strategy, the right content, the right messaging, it does not have to be creepy.
Yeah, the right communication always, as I said. But also, there are some countries where you have to let them know you're tracking their
Yeah.
activity on your site. The
Yeah.
European Union, for example, it's very strict on that, and you need to let them also know on your terms of service and your cookie policies and all of that. So, yeah, you can let them know. Yeah, but also write it in a way that they don't take advantage of it. If you know that if you sign up you get a discount, so that this Joe Smith doesn't sign up 10 times with 10 different emails so that he can get 10 different discounts. You can, depending on the platform you're using, you can do this. But as I said, it depends on how you word it, and how you prepare your
Yeah.
strategy and your promotion, how you
Yeah.
limit it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Was I going to say anything else about that? I don't think so. Oh, just with how legally in a way, you have to let people know that they're being tracked. I didn't need to mention this really, but in general with MailerLite, like they have to be on your list by their own choice as well. They have to have signed up. This is not, none of this is about like scraping email lists or purchasing them, emailing people who don't want to be emailed. Like if they're already your subscribers in a way they should be expecting emails from you. It shouldn't be this kind of thing where it's like, what is this? Why am I on this list? Why who is this person? So it's just a thing. I do like this point. I think it is important to bring up. This is when I was talking about the cleaning list and I showed that like never opened stat. Someone asked, how can you be sure that the never not opened stat is true? I've heard that some email systems might show it wrong, if that makes sense. And it's not so much, I can answer this just in the beginning. It's not so much that the email system, as in MailerLite, is showing it wrong. It's that certain email providers allow people to disable the ability to have their opens be tracked. So I believe Apple Mail is one of them. If you have an Apple Mail account, you as the Apple Mail user, sender, can say, I don't want my opens tracked. That means that we cannot track the open. So we're not necessarily failing or getting it wrong. It's just that they themselves, as an individual, have said, I do not want my opens tracked. And there really isn't anything we can do about that other than look at things like clicks as an indicator of obviously if they're clicking, they're opening. You can also separate out by email provider. So you can separate out Apple Mail users or specific providers that do have the ability to turn off opens if you really want to get technical about, your stats. But that's kind of my 2 cents on that. It is possible.
Yeah, you can also in your warm-up communications to your audience, you can also ask them, oh, what type of content would you like, and try to send a couple of emails to re-engage them. If you don't get any answer, you can also send an email saying, if you don't open this email, you will be deleted from the list or something, and along those lines, very direct, so that the person, if they don't actually open that one last email, they are actually not engaging with your email, because chances are a lot of times, like, we don't want to be removed from anywhere. So a lot of times people do open that as email. Otherwise, you can add them also to the either iOS clients, because on your iPhone you can decide not to get tracked. um, that could be another option, or simply just after a couple of re-engagement emails, if this person doesn't interact with your emails, then
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, it's a lost client. Yeah.
And it looks like we're basically at the hour mark. I'm looking at the other questions. People have kind of similar things, and I don't want to go over, I don't want to take up too much of anyone else's time. I'll just see if there's really anything we want to bring up towards the end. In the meantime, Jenny, I was also going to um, say, because you shared with us your calendar link as well, and I wanted to say if anyone is interested in getting in touch with Jenny specifically, she works with lots of different types of businesses, and I will drop her link to her calendar in the webinar chat. I'll also share it in the follow-up email to everyone who signed up. But if you wanted to say anything about just if people want to work with you, anything about that.
Yeah, it's I'm offering a 30-minute free call to talk about specifically your business and your questions about e-commerce or email marketing or your business in general. I work with service businesses and e-commerce, and I help them get business ready for their online operations. Right now, I have my schedule is open to get them ready for BFCM and the holiday season. So if you're interested, just book your call with me. Happy
Perfect.
to.
Thank you so
Mm.
much. And that is a good point. I wanted to say that because I do see some questions that are like very industry specific. People are asking about strategies for Latin American companies. I see someone talking about an ebook that's going to be that they're preparing for BFCM. So this would be a good thing to talk to Jenny about because every industry is different, every strategy is different, every market is different. So things like this, where you do have these specific industry questions, highly recommend to take advantage of that free call. Okay, I think we are done. So thank you. Thank you for everyone who joined us. Thank you to panelists for answering questions, anyone who just engaged. I appreciate everyone being here. Of course, thank you so much to Jenny for sharing all of your insight, for joining us here today. We really appreciate it, and I believe our audience does too. Everyone's asking a lot of questions, and I can see that it was engaged. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a
Perfect. And
pleasure.
we'll send out more info in the follow-up email. And yeah, everyone have a beautiful rest of your day. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you in the next one.
Thank
Bye,
you, everyone.
everyone.